Storytelling is the most human endeavor. As Thomas King wrote, the truth about stories is that's all we are. We are the stories we tell, the stories we hear. We are the interconnected web of one story bumping up against another, becoming something new, taking for granted the intertextuality of the hundreds and thousands of stories each of us consume. Walter Ong describes the effect of literacy on thinking patterns. The very thinking patterns of a literate population organize into a more linear narrative. What then is the effect of visual storytelling, like plays and movies?
Parting is such sweet sorrow, but I shall say good night till it be morrow.
The audience of the oldest plays sat on the stage, and there was very little room between the audience and the actors. Plays were interactive. Actors often had to move around the audience members, often breaking character to excuse themselves as they stepped over the audience member. In the 1600s, plays were very popular entertainment and rivaled the appeal of bear baiting and cockfighting as forms of entertainment. Plays were popular amongst all economic backgrounds. The groundlings, who had each paid a penny, the price of a loaf of bread, were very vocal about whether or not they enjoyed the play. As the theater evolved, the separation between player and audience increased, and the magical illusion of storytelling increased. Sarah Hatchell writes in Shakespeare from Stage to Screen that the 18th century stage set a tradition that already foreshadowed filmic illusion. At the start of the 18th century, the system of painted shutters was developed. The shutters slid along rails to facilitate placement during the performance and were positioned on the stage at various distances to create a trompe-l'oeil effect. Painted landscapes or interiors seemed to get smaller according to the natural laws of perspective and merged into a distant point on the horizon. The presentation of plays, therefore, began to strive to transcend the physical limits imposed by the stage, creating imaginary spaces. Writers were prolific at the time because large audiences came to see the plays and often wanted to see something new. If the audience wasn't happy, they let the players know by booing or destroying parts of the theater, unlike the staid theatergoers of today. As theater became more popular, managers made more space for audience and separated actors and audience. Spectators were happy with the level of comfort provided by the new auditorium and finally accepted that they would no longer sit on the stage. A virtual fourth wall was created and audience passivity encouraged. During the 18th century, a curtain was used to hide machinery and prepare special effects. Sarah Hatchell writes that, in Henry Irving's productions, a mysterious castle could suddenly be replaced by a beautiful garden or a spooky crypt. The rapidity with which a tableau was replaced by another, thanks to rail systems and hydraulic mechanisms, soon became a feature of the 19th century stage, as essential as visual and sound realism. This effect, called wand change, gave the impression of miraculous and immediate apparitions. Special effects became more convincing. Productions included extensive instrumental music to intensify emotion during dialogues. Yet, in contrast to the 18th century stages, the musicians could no longer be seen by the audience. The pit music they produced did not belong to the world of the play. By convention, the characters were not supposed to hear it. The first films were kinetoscopes, and for the price of a penny, the same price as early admission to the theater, a single person could watch a 1-minute film. Many audiences didn't care what was filmed, as long as it moved. They originally debuted in arcades, and early audiences were mainly men, looking for suggestive material. The invention of the motion picture camera around 1890 set off an era of experimentation that led to the development of feature films by 1910. By the 1900s, the kinetoscope was replaced by the projector, and movies were considered a refined form of vaudeville. Nickelodeons, named so because of the price of entry, were seen as a place where immigrants gathered to talk, and its reputation made it unappealing to middle-class viewers. Although outside the major centers, research shows that early nickel shows were popular with middle-class viewers on their way home from work or stopping off for entertainment. There were concerns about the negative effects of viewing this material and how it would corrupt audiences not by the content of the film, but from audiences interacting with one another because of the poor immigrants or young women interacting with older men. The popularity continued to grow, however, and early audiences with leisure time and money could go to the movies. Nearly 1/3 of Americans went to the theater each week. Small, inexpensive movie houses tended to be called Nickelodeons, while the larger houses with a more well-off audience was called a theater. By 1907, the growth in popularity and profitability was attributed to women and children who were not required to dress up because of the casual nature of the cinema. They were popular in part because of the accessibility. Places to see films were many and inexpensive. Cinema replaced live actors, but presentation of film was not yet standard, and in the 1920s, owners tailored films to suit the needs of their audiences, slowing down the film or even running it backwards to delight audiences. There was often lots of interaction between audiences and owners. Hard times favored less expensive movies over the more expensive theater. As they became more profitable, movies moved out of storefronts and into their own spaces where they continued to become more profitable. The move from live theater to movie theater continued as movie companies began buying and aggressively closing theaters. Audience interaction with film changed visual literacy. The first edited films were intense experiences for audiences who had little experience with the rapid change in image, and audiences were known to scream and hide. The Great Train Robbery from 1903 is one of the first and most famous examples of cutting. In the first few minutes of the film, there's a shot of the robbers bursting into the train depot office. Film editing allowed stories to be told in new ways. D.W. Griffith wove together 4 separate storylines by cross-cutting scenes from different times and places in Intolerance. Sergei Eisenstein forwarded the idea of the montage, most famously in Battleship Potemkin and his first feature, Strike. Continuity editing, shot sizes, including the close-up, the use of color, parallel editing, camera movement, all of these things and more began to speak to audiences and filmmakers in new and exciting ways. The grammar of screen communication has changed, and the speed of cuts has changed. The pace of early films looks painfully slow next to the rapid-fire cutting of present-day visual stories. The modern commercial contains more than 1 cut per second. The commercial aspect of storytelling with neuroscience backing it up, telling advertisers which moments are most effective and cutting out everything else, affects long-form storytelling as well.
In color, of course. Newest Instamatic camera outfits from less than $18, only from Kodak.
According to Telefilm Canada, most audiences today go to see a movie on opening day, and the numbers drop off precipitously after the first week. Audiences today consume story ravenously, like audiences of the Middle Age, constantly seeking new stories, although stories today are available at the click of a remote button. Story evolves, but the essence of the story, the ability to convey emotion and evoke a response in the audience, remains the same. A new type of narrative is emerging, one that's told through many media at once, in a way that's non-linear, participatory, and above all, immersive. Deep media stories that take audiences deeper than an hour-long TV drama, or a 2-hour movie, or a 30-second spot will permit. Audience participation, it seems, has come full circle, in that producers of stories are able to respond to audience responses. Today, filmmakers and viewers are visually literate. Audiences get wrapped up in the story, the visuals, and the music, feeling sad when watching an on-screen breakup or fight between 2 people who had been close. But we may fail to realize, or at least consciously identify, that a lot of the drama that leads to the climax was created using visual cues. The internet is the first medium that can act like all media. It can be text or audio or video or all of the above. It's inherently participatory, not just interactive, in the sense that it responds to commands, but is also an instigator, constantly encouraging audiences to comment, to contribute, to join in. It seems audiences have come full circle, to a place where, rather than passive consumption of story, audience is once again participating and influencing the stories we consume.